Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hindu Explain series. I am Kushagra Goel. And on a new day, there is one big judgment that came out yesterday, but I will not be dealing with it today because it's a 600-page plus judgment. So to analyze the judgment, it will take a little bit of time. But I assure you, I will deal with it tomorrow or day after, as in when I complete going through the entire judgment. Because to synthesize what is relevant from a CLAT perspective, I need to go through the judgment myself, okay? So because it is 660 pages long, I will take a little bit of while. So don't worry, but we will discuss the Central Vista Supreme Court judgment, okay? Now with about regard to doubts, because many people are watching it, for which we are really grateful for, we have a lot more doubts coming in. So I will be taking assistance of the phone every day to read out the doubts whenever there are a lot of them, okay? So one doubt students had was, what is the difference between a financial aid and an economic aid? Financial aid is basically, for example, I am studying in college, my NLU fees is approximately 15 to 16 lakh per over the course of 5 years. So I am incapable of paying for it. So someone assist me, okay? So that kind of aid which is given for educational or any research purposes is known as financial aid, okay? Now economic aid is basically the aid that is given to countries or any company, basically to restart your business or assist yourself or grow your business, okay? So the aid in terms of tax rebate or any other form that helps you to countries or to any business, that is known as economic aid, okay? Aid is basically assistance, and economic aid is given to countries or any large organization. Financial aid is is smaller in size. You can interchangeably use them, but you have to understand the context. So for perspective in general, financial aid is known as given to an individual person for their specific need, college fees, construction of a house or any of that sort, okay? Next doubt that students had was, Indian government has sanctioned liquidity relief to help discoms tide over crisis. What is the liquidity relief? Liquidity relief. So simply, when you do a business or any discoms, what are discoms? Discoms are those organizations that supply electricity, right? So they are the ones that collect the electricity bill and then pay the producer of the electricity. So in change, they have to bear the brunt of supplying the electricity, any maintenance of wires and all. So discoms in India have been suffering a lot of losses. So liquidity relief or assistance is what, when you give money, so when government gives discoms, let's say interest free loans, or for example they just give them 20,000 crore to tide over their losses. So they have incurred losses, let's say of 20,000 crore, government announces in the budget relief, liquidity relief in the sense of day to day business. So if you have losses, then no one will want to, or what do losses mean for discoms? That you are unable to pay for the things that you need. Now when you cannot do, people will not supply you more. If discoms are in trouble, then people will not get electricity supply. So that can cause a problem. So to tide over that, liquidity relief is known as money given by government or any other organization to discoms to tide over their day to day running or losses, okay, to pay back their losses or any other form of relief that they need. Liquidity is money, okay. Then next, a lot of students also had a doubt about carbon footprint. What does carbon footprint mean? So simply, carbon footprint is, so this LCD screen that you have in the background, this mobile phone, all of them were used to produce them. Some amount of energy was needed, right? To, let's say, produce the plastic, you had to have a lot of heat. So to generate that heat, you had to burn any fossil fuels. So any amount of energy in the form of consumption of carbon is known as carbon footprint, okay. So carbon footprint of yourself. So in general, count, for example, the number of hours you use your television, electricity, appliances, all of them are using electricity from non-renewable energy sources, okay. Then that is consuming carbon, because you are burning carbon that has been in the earth, coal, petroleum, natural gas for thousands and thousands, even millions of years, right? So that is carbon that you are consuming. Now that general, when you for example also use petrol to travel from one place to another, then also you are consuming some amount of carbon. So the total carbon you are using on your daily needs is your carbon footprint. Are you giving back enough to reduce your carbon footprint? Let's say the food that you use, are you segregating the trash to differentiate between wet waste and dry waste? Then are you disposing of plastics and metals separately than your other waste? Are you for example planting trees, or so any other form of way with which you can reduce your carbon footprint or consumption of carbon from non-renewable energy sources is reduction of carbon footprint. Any person can, just to realize how much sustainable you are living, calculate your carbon footprint on a daily basis, okay? Then another doubt a lot more people had was, what is zero coupon bonds? See, when you buy a bond, there is a fixed interest rate for them, okay? So let's say I buy a bond of 20,000 rupees which has an interest rate of 2%, okay? So probably I'll get 200 rupees on return of the maturity of a bond. Zero coupon bonds are those bonds that do not have any interest rate on it, okay? So even after the maturity of the bond, I will not get any extra interest. But zero coupon bonds are specific because you can purchase the bond at a smaller amount. So let's say the bond and eventually is of 20,000 rupees, but to buy the bond I only have to pay 18,500. So I am making a profit of 1,500, okay? So those kinds of bonds are known as zero coupon bonds, okay? Then another doubt students had, consideration query, okay, what is federalism? Okay, federalism in general is when there is a central government, state governments, then panchayat, okay? So the power of legislature or governance is divided in different tiers. When it is divided in two tiers, central government, state government, it is known as or three tiers. India has a three-tier federal structure, okay? So we have central government and then states, and within states we have panchayats and municipalities, okay? So we have a three-tier structure. Originally our constitution had a two-tier structure, okay? United States is also a federal government because they have 51 states and one central government. But United Kingdom is a unitary government. It is not federal. There are no states in United Kingdom, okay? So that is a difference between federalism and a unitary system. So, last concern that students had was about general knowledge or preparation of GK in general. If you have been watching the series since November, you would realize that you are able to understand most of the things that are coming in newspaper on a daily basis, okay? There is very few information that actually comes across as unique because you have been consistent with it. On a daily basis, if you notice about the vaccines, the news about vaccine is something that has been there on the primary news for the past 2-3 days. But if you have been watching the series, since November only we have covered most of the vaccines, what they mean, their testing facilities, what is their structure, different individuals involved. So therefore your current affairs about things that come in a daily newspaper are now reducing because you have invested in it at an earlier stage, okay? So similarly about current affairs, this series does cover most of the things that you really need, okay? So don't worry about missing out. If you have been following the series, we assure you that most of your preparation for daily current affairs is done here itself, okay? So on that note, I will now begin with today's newspaper. So on the left hand side, again, as I said yesterday, the Supreme Court gave a go ahead to the Central Vista project, the redevelopment of the area. It was a split judgment, 2:1. One judge, Justice Khanna, Sanjeev Khanna, dissented and stated that no, the government has not followed the process, okay? So it will take time to go through the judgment. So therefore, I will not discuss it today, but tomorrow or day after tomorrow, because it is a big judgment and from CLAT perspective, you have to read the judgment on your own. So I will be doing that for you all, so don't worry. We have discussed the redevelopment plan, what it is, but what are the issues on which the government has been, or what was the concerns that were before the Supreme Court government, all of that I will discuss for you all, okay. Then on the left hand side, the plan of how vaccines will be given, where they will be stored, and all of that is now pouring in. So there will be 4 main centers: Karnal in Haryana, Mumbai in Maharashtra, Chennai in Tamil Nadu, and Kolkata in West Bengal. They will be the 4 main centers from to where vaccine will be supplied, and then from there onwards there are 37 state stores, okay, where vaccine will be supplied, and then it will go to public healthcare centers where it will actually be administered, okay. So the rollout plan of this is now being prepared, okay. Another big update for us is that we had discussed how the chief guest for the Republic Day parade in 2021 was to be the Prime Minister of Britain, Boris Johnson, but yesterday he announced, in light of the coronavirus crisis escalating in United Kingdom, that he won't be coming, and he has called off his visit, okay. So now we'll have to see whether we'll have a chief guest. If we don't have a chief guest, it will be the first time since 1966 that we will not have a chief guest in the Republic Day parade, okay. Then the concern or fear over bird flu is now rampant across the country. From Himachal Pradesh up to Kerala, there is concern about bird flu in different species of the birds, from poultry to migratory species to birds in your city area are found to be dying in large numbers, and there is concern most of in Rajasthan, in Himachal Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, all these tests have come positive for bird flu, okay. So the virus, the influenza number for bird flu is H5N8, okay. That is what you need to know at this point of time, okay. Then moving on, the farmer protest, the impasse is going on. Also yesterday marked 1 year of attack on the JNU campus. A huge mob had entered the JNU campus and attacked the students and destroyed a lot of property, but throughout the year, despite having CCTV footage and all of that, no one has actually been captured or arrested or tried for the charges, okay, of violence at the JNU campus. So now we'll move on. Apart from national news from this side or the other, the one other news for us, I will move on to the editorial front, okay. There is political news, which what should be named after whom or concerns. So those are not academic points, and therefore we will not be discussing that, okay. On the editorial front, there are multiple editorials that are relevant for you. So therefore I will take a little bit of time to discuss that here onwards, okay. So the first one on the left hand side is about moribund governance. This is about an incident that happened in Ghaziabad in Uttar Pradesh, where a crematory's roof collapsed and people who had gone to attend the crematorium died. Almost 50 plus people suffered injuries, and among that 23 passed away on spot, okay. So which is something that is a huge concern. In the sense, the editorial tells us that, see, despite there have been suggestions that the UP government will impose National Security Act against the contractor and the engineer who were in charge of the construction, the editorial tells us that, see, all such events of imposing such things are not actually going to improve the level of governance in the country. What you really need is a general practice that improves governance, rather than imposing strict law in one case and not actually reforming the system, okay. Then on the left hand side, again, England in lockdown. So a new lockdown has also been imposed in United Kingdom, which may last up to March, okay. And then what this tells us, the rapid spread of the new COVID strain should be alert other countries to remain vigilant. What this tells us is that the lesson learned that needs to be learned here is that COVID-19, until it is actually over, we cannot put our guard down, and we need to continue remain vigilant. And countries also, they need to be vigilant about new variants of the virus and how to address that or not let it escalate how it had happened in United Kingdom, okay. The new variant in South Africa is also something of a concern. In anticipation that probably the vaccines will not work against that strain. Okay, so that tells us that we need to be vigilant. Okay, then on the main editorial, the dark step of writing hate into law. Okay, this is talking about the Uttar Pradesh anti-conversion law. There are two anecdotes of how this is trying to draw a contrast from the lessons of history of from where Uttar Pradesh started when India got independence to what it has become now, in the sense that this editorial believes the theme of the laws passed in Uttar Pradesh, the ordinance passed, is actually to profess hate in the society and create division. And so we will talk about those anecdotes, and another, again this iterates the same case of Shafeen Jahan versus Ashokan KM, where Supreme Court upheld the individual's right to decide who they want to marry. Okay, so I have been reiterating, re-emphasizing why that case is really important. So if you haven't, check the Google link given in the description box, and from there see the episode where we have discussed the case of Shafeen Jahan versus Ashokan KM and make notes of it. Okay, so the anecdote is about a former Prime Minister of India, Chaudhry Charan Singh. In 1954, he wrote a letter to the then Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and what he asked for was an ordinance. He's wanted Nehru to pass a law so that jobs as gazetted officers could only be for those who wanted to or had married outside their caste. So Chaudhry Charan Singh then asked Prime Minister Nehru to pass a law that only those people be made gazetted officers or part of government jobs. Back then, government jobs were the main source of employment in the in the service sector, unlike the jobs that we have today. And he asked the government to make a law that only those will be made officers who actually marry outside their caste, to integrate or to reduce the division between different castes. And today, from there onwards, the origin of the Special Marriage Act was brought into. And today, the anti-conversion law of Uttar Pradesh is actually to provide in details or ask for details if you are marrying outside your community or from your religion. The editorial then tells us that what this does is that, one, it gives interest to people, for example, the state, the police, different members of the community, relatives, to decide upon whether you should marry the person you want to, which is in contrast to the case of Shafeen Jahan versus Ashokan KM, in which Supreme Court stated that no person, if there are two adults, have the right to decide who they want to marry. Okay, we have talked about the details of the Uttar Pradesh anti-conversion law multiple times. So the editorial then tells us that how this was something similar to what had happened in the Nazi Germany, when the Nazi party had wanted to divide people, that Jews and Aryans should remain separate. So, but what becomes again and again, apart from these incident and anecdotes, is the case of Shafeen Jahan versus Ashokan KM for you all, because that is the one that is academically relevant, in the sense that it talks about individual rights, fundamental rights, the right to choose. All of those are what is really from an academic point of view. Rest of it is mostly the role of the state, all political analysis and general policy narrative. Okay, but what we need to focus is the academic point. Okay, then the shock treatment will not work in agriculture. Post 1991, changes in industry caused a second deindustrialization. The results of agriculture are likely to be no different. What this tells us is that this is an analysis of the reforms that were carried out post 1991 in India, and this tells us that, see, no one believes that the agriculture APMC Mandi system is the best one, but what this does is it increases the role of sahibs. What we have, when we had discussed the agricultural bills, we had known that now it will be the executive who will decide between corporates and farmers, and the experience tells us that how this always favors the corporates. Okay, so this is something that it talks about in general. Give it a read. If you have any doubts about this, let me know here. okay, in the comment section. This is generally another perspective to the farm bills, okay. But what it again lists out is the concern of executive being the decision making party between farmers and the traders, okay. Then on the op-ed page, the left hand side is about Xi Jinping and his ambition of making China a superpower. But what the distinction being drawn here is that you can increase your military might. China now has the world's largest navy. You can monopolize or steal new technologies that gives you an economic advantage. But to be a real global world leader, the difference that is being drawn between China and United States being wanting to be superpowers is the reason why US was a legitimate superpower or everyone looked up to them was because it was an inclusive system. Countries were actually involved. It was proactive in the sense of providing relief to global crisis. But something that what China does not find is because there are multiple countries, for example India, European Union, Australia, Japan, who have countered China's ambition of wanting to dominate them. The distinction here between India and China, United States is US did not want to dominate the other countries in the sense that European Union, Japan, Australia, India, but China wants to do that, okay. So that is a policy international analysis. And on the left hand side, this is updated article about the UK India ties and how India would do better to cut down on its Republic Day parade expenditure and try to analyze and improve the trade between United Kingdom and India and how it can be done, okay. So those are suggestions and different policy narratives, okay. Then on the left hand side, an arbitrary directive. This is again with the conflict between the government of West Bengal and the central government, and how the recent controversy of deputing 3 officers back to center and what that does to the morale of the services in general. The procedure that is being told to us by a retired IPS officer is that officers who want a central deputation, or when the central government wants someone to be deputed to the state, to back to the center, then the consent of the officer, their submission plus that of the state government is also taken, so that there is no disaffection or demoralized officer who actually takes charge, because then that affects the efficiency of the services. So give this a read. There is not much conflict, but it is just a general practice that was followed. It is true that the Ministry of Home Affairs controls all the police officers, but it is not by brute force that they are actually given deputations, okay. Then moving on to other national news, Prime Minister yesterday inaugurated the Kochi-Mangaluru LNG pipeline, okay, and he stated that the government's intention, India's plan is to move towards a economy that is supported by natural gas, okay. So on the other side of the national news, again we don't have much update for you all from the academic point of view. There is one news, which is that the union budget will be presented on February 1. So the budget session of the parliament will happen then, okay. And then apart from that, there is update of why the Pfizer vaccine has not been approved in India, which has been approved in UK and US, is because the Pfizer company has not attended the meeting before the expert panel, okay. And apart from that, again on the economic or the international front, there is not much update. The Georgia runoff elections for the Senate seats in the United States will be taking place today, okay. And then on the left hand side, there is a small news of rapprochement between Qatar and Saudi Arabia. What has been decided in this? What will this be the consequences? This event has huge ramifications in the politics of Middle East in general, okay. So as more details start pouring in, we will discuss this probably tomorrow itself, because more updates about this will come out in a day's time, okay. Then apart from that, again on the economic and sport front, not much update. There is controversy that probably the sponsors of the Indian team, the main sponsor to the Indian jersey and BCCI for the Indian cricket team, has a conflict of interest, which is that our current incumbent captain Virat Kohli has invested in it. So that is a story that has also come out again with conflict of interest between posts and services, something we had talked about when we had the AGM meeting of BCCI had taken place, where the president of BCCI is also a sponsor of rival companies which are sponsors of BCCI. Now there is news that our Indian captain of the male team has invested in the company which is a sponsor to the BCCI. Okay, so that is again about conflict of interest in BCCI. As more developments happen about it, we will discuss that in more depth. Okay, from on this note, I will end for the day. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the work that we are doing, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have any doubts about the editorials that we discussed, put it in the comment section and I will be very happy to address them. Thank you.